For years, Meghan and Harry's love story has been a mix of fairy tale romance and headline-grabbing drama. No matter what came their way, they always stood together, unshaken. But now, insiders claim the cracks are starting to show. In a moment of raw honesty and overwhelming emotion, Meghan is said to have finally admitted a truth about Prince Harry that she's been carrying for a long time. What could have pushed the usually composed Duchess to this breaking point? The answer is buried in a tangled story of love, pressure, and betrayal, one that feels like a royal drama, but comes with very real stakes. Rewind to when it all began, and Meghan and Harry's rise seemed like a modern-day love story straight out of a movie. When their worlds collided in 2016, it was the start of something historic. Harry, the fun-loving British prince with a rebellious streak, and Meghan, the accomplished American actress with a passion for humanitarian work, made an unlikely but captivating pair. As the world watched, their relationship blossomed, leading up to a wedding in 2018 that millions tuned in to see. Their Windsor ceremony felt like a breath of fresh air for the royal family. Modern, diverse, and full of hope. Meghan's biracial American background brought a new dimension to the monarchy, adding a sense of inclusivity that was long overdue. With crowds cheering and headlines hailing their love story, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex started their married life with high expectations. But their bond wasn't just built on love. It was also strengthened by challenges. Even in those early days, they had their battles. One of the first came when Harry took an extraordinary step, something no royal had done before. He publicly defended Meghan against racist and sexist media attacks. In a fiery statement in November 2016, he slammed the harassment Meghan was facing, calling out both the not-so-subtle racial undertones in the press and the outright hostility from social media trolls. It was clear that Harry was fiercely protective of the woman he loved. Meghan, for her part, threw herself into royal life with confidence and charm. Their first official tour to Australia and the South Pacific in 2018 was an undeniable success. Fans flocked to see them, and Meghan handled royal duties with ease, her charisma shining through. The press couldn't stop talking about how effortlessly she stepped into her role alongside Harry. To the world, they looked unstoppable, a power couple standing strong against tradition and the relentless tabloids. But even as their love story played out in public, the pressure behind closed doors was mounting. The more popular they became, the more scrutiny they faced, and soon the cracks started to appear. For Harry, the struggle ran deep. He wasn't just the fun-loving prince everyone knew. He was carrying wounds from his past. Losing his mother, Princess Diana, in such a tragic way had left scars, and the constant flash of cameras was a painful reminder of that loss. In his own words, every camera flash took him straight back to the moment he lost her. The same media attention that helped them promote their causes was also reopening old wounds, fueling Harry's fierce protectiveness over Meghan and his deep fear that history might repeat itself. Harry had spent years bottling up his frustration and anxiety within the rigid walls of the royal system. It wasn't until Meghan encouraged him to try therapy that he finally started facing those demons. At one point early in their marriage, a heated argument sent Harry spiraling back into the emotions of his 12-year-old self, angry, grieving, and overwhelmed, until Meghan gently but firmly insisted he get help. This moment showed just how much she supported him, but it also revealed a side of Harry that few outsiders had ever seen. Deeply vulnerable and still carrying the weight of his past. Meanwhile, Meghan had her own struggles trying to fit into royal life. Beneath her Hollywood polish and passion for humanitarian work was an independent woman struggling to squeeze into a centuries-old mold. Behind closed doors, there were whispers that her strong work ethic and American directness weren't exactly winning her fans in the palace. By late 2018, the nickname Duchess Difficult started making the rounds in gossip columns, with claims that she overwhelmed palace staff with 5 a.m. emails and sky-high expectations. Meghan's legal team brushed it off as nothing more than a calculated smear campaign, but the damage to her public image had already been done. She also found the endless formalities of royal life exhausting. According to some reports, she privately admitted she found many royal events pointless and preferred to focus on causes that actually made a difference. Behind her polished public smile, frustration was bubbling beneath the surface. The British press, once obsessed with Meghan in a glowing, almost fairy tale-like way, quickly shifted gears and began scrutinizing her every move. The contrast in coverage between Meghan and Kate was glaring. One of the most talked about incidents was the so-called bridesmaid dress drama. Tabloids ran wild with claims that Meghan made Kate cry in the lead-up to the wedding, feeding the growing diva narrative. But years later, Meghan set the record straight. No, it was actually the other way around. Kate had made her cry during a stressful pre-wedding moment, though she later apologized with flowers and a note. Meghan had never wanted the world to know about this minor rift, but when the press painted her as the villain and the palace refused to correct the record, it left a lasting sting. This was becoming a pattern. Negative stories about Meghan were left unchecked by the royal family, making her feel abandoned and isolated. Tensions within the family only grew. Harry became increasingly protective of Meghan, and at times, resentful of the royal establishment for not defending her. He had seen this story before. His mother, Princess Diana, had been torn apart by the press, and now history seemed to be repeating itself. One particularly tense moment was when Harry confronted his brother, Prince William, accusing him of not doing enough to welcome Meghan into the family. The once inseparable brothers were growing distant, and Meghan, along with the media storm surrounding her, was at the center of it all. By 2019, Harry himself acknowledged the growing divide, carefully choosing his words in an interview saying, "We're certainly on different paths at the moment." For Meghan and Harry, who had built a strong us-against-the-world mentality, these cracks, personal, family-related, and media-driven, were early warning signs of a much bigger fracture ahead. As the pressures mounted, their life together started unraveling in real time, playing out for the world like a slow-motion royal disaster. At the start of 2018, they were basking in their fairy tale wedding, but by the end of the year, the cracks were impossible to ignore. In November, they made the unexpected announcement that they were moving out of Kensington Palace to set up their new home at Frogmore Cottage. Rumors immediately swirled that tensions with the Cambridges had forced the move, fueled by the relentless Meghan versus Kate drama that tabloids couldn't get enough of. The palace refused to comment, but by then the narrative had already taken hold. Around the same time, stories started leaking about high staff turnover and Meghan's allegedly demanding personality, an early sign that she was struggling to conform to royal expectations, and that those around her weren't exactly adjusting to her style either. In 2019, Meghan and Harry's world changed forever with the arrival of their first child, Archie, in May. It should have been a purely joyful moment, but even this milestone wasn't free from scrutiny. Their wish for privacy sparked endless debates, and Meghan's post-baby public appearances were dissected with the same relentless intensity as before. By October, the cracks in their cheerful facade were impossible to miss. During their Africa tour, they filmed an emotionally raw ITV documentary, where Meghan's vulnerability finally broke through. In a moment that caught many off guard, she sincerely thanked the interviewer for simply asking how she was coping, admitting that, "Not many people have asked if I'm okay." Her eyes filled with tears as she confessed that the past year had been incredibly challenging, juggling life as a new wife, a new mother, and a constant target for the press. Harry, too, opened up in the film, speaking about his strained relationship with William and the anxiety that still haunted him every time a camera flashed, a wound that had never fully healed since his mother's death. These honest revelations made one thing clear. Behind the carefully polished smiles, the couple was struggling. By the end of the year, whispers of an exit plan were growing louder. As 2020 rolled in, Meghan and Harry stunned the world with an announcement that no one saw coming. They planned to step back as senior royals, become financially independent, and split their time between the UK and North America. The public was shocked, but inside the palace, the reaction was even more dramatic. Reports suggested that the royal family had been blindsided by the timing, and things quickly escalated into full crisis mode. A high-stakes meeting, known as the Sandringham Summit, was arranged with the Queen, Charles, and William to work out the details of this unprecedented royal shakeup. Behind closed doors, tensions ran high. According to Harry, William was furious, screaming and shouting at him during the discussions. In the days that followed, the palace attempted to present a united front, even issuing a rare joint statement from Harry and William, forcefully denying rumors that William had bullied the Sussexes into leaving. But behind the scenes, things were far from peaceful. Harry was stunned. He had never agreed to that statement and was furious that his name had been attached to it without his consent. When he told Meghan what had happened, she broke down in tears. For years, the palace had stayed silent while false and damaging stories about her spread like wildfire. Yet, in just 4 hours, they had stepped in to protect William. "They were happy to lie to protect my brother, but they weren't willing to tell the truth to protect us," Harry later recalled. For Meghan, it was the final betrayal. She had given up everything, her career, her independence, even her home, to serve an institution that had repeatedly left her to fend for herself. In that moment, she realized that it was never going to stop. The attacks, the rumors, the silence from those who could have defended her. It would all continue unless they took control of their own narrative. In March 2020, Meghan and Harry officially stepped down, relocating overseas in search of a fresh start. They hoped that by leaving behind the relentless scrutiny of the British press, they might finally find some peace. But it quickly became clear that if the palace wasn't going to tell their side of the story, they would have to do it themselves. And so, in March 2021, they sat down for a tell-all interview with Oprah Winfrey, a conversation that would go down as one of the most explosive in modern royal history. Over 2 hours, they laid bare the struggles and pain they had endured. Meghan revealed that the pressure and isolation had pushed her to a breaking point. "I just didn't want to be alive anymore," she admitted, recalling how she had begged for help, only to be turned away by palace officials. But that wasn't the only bombshell. She also disclosed that there had been disturbing concerns and conversations within the royal family about how dark Archie's skin might be, an admission that sent shockwaves across the world and reignited conversations about racism within the monarchy. Harry, too, spoke with heartbreaking honesty. He described feeling trapped within royal life, the pain of being cut off financially, and the devastation of his father refusing to take his calls. These weren't just sensational headlines, they were deeply personal truths, shared on an international stage for the entire world to hear. The fallout was massive. The palace issued a carefully worded response, stating that recollections may vary regarding certain events, but that the concerns, especially those related to race, would be addressed privately. Meanwhile, Harry refused to stay silent. In the months that followed, he became an even more vocal advocate for mental health. By May 2021, he had co-created a documentary series about the subject, opening up about his struggles and crediting Meghan for helping him break free from his downward spiral. Despite his advocacy work, tensions with his family remained as icy as ever. In April 2021, Harry returned to England alone for Prince Philip's funeral, the first time he had come face-to-face with his father and brother since the royal split. Reports described the encounter as tense and uncomfortable. That June, he and Meghan welcomed their second child, Lilibet, a moment of joy that quickly turned into yet another controversy. Critics debated whether using the Queen's cherished nickname was a touching tribute or an inappropriate choice. No matter what they did, the couple couldn't escape scrutiny. Through 2022, Harry and Meghan focused on building their new life in California. They signed lucrative deals with Netflix and Spotify, launched their charitable foundation, and re-entered the public eye, this time on their own terms. But as they carved out their new path, the rift with the royal family only grew deeper. By December, the highly anticipated Netflix docuseries Harry and Meghan premiered, pulling back the curtain on their departure in greater detail. Harry revisited the chaos of their royal exit, describing the shouting match at Sandringham and the infamous joint statement that shattered Meghan's trust. Meghan herself admitted she felt like she had been fed to the wolves by the press while the palace stood by, offering no protection. Harry delivered one of the documentary's most searing lines. "They were happy to lie to protect my brother. They were never willing to tell the truth to protect us." The couple's accusations of institutional gaslighting sparked both sympathy and backlash, reigniting debates about the monarchy's treatment of them. Then, in September 2022, tragedy struck. Queen Elizabeth II passed away, forcing Meghan and Harry back into the royal fold, if only temporarily. As the world mourned, Meghan was seen wiping away a tear at the funeral, standing apart from the rest of the family in more ways than one. Any hopes of a heartfelt reconciliation seemed slim. An awkward moment outside Windsor Castle, where Meghan and Harry joined William and Kate, made it painfully clear that the distance between them remained. Once the funeral rites concluded, the Sussexes left England, their position within the family as uncertain as ever. The new year brought yet another royal earthquake. In January 2023, Harry released his highly anticipated memoir, Spare, which immediately became a bestseller and a fresh source of controversy. In its pages, Harry held nothing back, offering a raw and unfiltered look at royal life, family dysfunction, and years of simmering resentments. The most shocking revelation? A heated 2019 confrontation in which William allegedly grabbed Harry by the collar, ripped his necklace, and threw him to the ground, causing him to crash onto a dog's bowl, which shattered beneath him. The image of the two princes locked in physical conflict stunned the public, revealing just how fractured their relationship had become behind closed doors. Beyond the royal feuds, Spare also delved into Harry's mental health struggles, his time in the military, and the emotional scars left by his mother's tragic death. Public reaction was divided. Some praised his brutal honesty, while others accused him and Meghan of oversharing and profiting from their royal grievances. By mid-2023, the Sussexes faced new hurdles. Not every venture flourished. Their multi-million-dollar Spotify deal, once a crown jewel of their post-royal career, ended abruptly in June, with only one podcast series produced. The setback showed that even outside palace walls, life wasn't without its own set of challenges. The abrupt split sparked questions even from media outlets that had once been supportive. Critics wasted no time in tearing into them. One Spotify executive notoriously lashed out, calling them effing grifters and scoffing, "I can't stand him," about Harry, a sign of how uncharitable some industry insiders had become toward them. Meanwhile, the paparazzi remained relentless. In a shocking incident in New York, the couple claimed they had been involved in a near-catastrophic car chase with photographers, a chilling echo of Diana's fate. However, the press was quick to cast doubt on their version of events, and instead of sympathy, their concerns were met with skepticism by some. Even as they tried to move forward, the tabloids refused to let them be. Rumors swirled about cracks in their marriage, with headlines speculating that the pressures of post-royal life had driven a wedge between them. The gossip became so constant that Harry himself couldn't resist making a joke about it. In late 2024, he quipped, "We've apparently divorced maybe 10, 12 times as well. It's hard to keep up." His sarcasm was clear, but beneath it was a noticeable frustration. No matter how far they were from the palace, their lives remained under a magnifying glass. By the end of 2023, nearly every aspect of their journey had been dissected and debated, except one: Meghan's personal breaking point. Through every controversy, she had presented a composed and supportive front, always standing by Harry's side, always resilient. But behind closed doors, those closest to her could see the weight she carried. They knew it was only a matter of time before the pressure became too much. After enduring years of upheaval, Meghan and Harry found themselves in an unsettling position. They had achieved the freedom they fought for, built a life in California, and spoken their truth. Yet the past still loomed over them. Meghan, by 43, had lived through a whirlwind, falling in love with a prince, becoming a mother, escaping the constraints of royal life, only to face relentless scrutiny all over again. People who knew her best noticed subtle changes. The once radiant actress-turned-duchess seemed more guarded, quieter in public, her once regular social media presence fading. She stepped back from the spotlight, choosing instead to focus on raising Archie and Lilibet, supporting Harry's causes, and insulating herself from the endless barrage of negativity. Insiders described her as being in self-protective mode, absorbing the emotional toll of everything they had endured. Meanwhile, Harry was grappling with his own struggles. Pouring out his emotions in interviews and his memoir may have provided catharsis, but it also forced him to relive painful wounds. Once inseparable from his brother and father, he was now estranged, left in an emotional limbo. Observers noted that Harry, always the more impulsive of the two, seemed increasingly anxious, especially in solo appearances. Meghan, in turn, took on the role of his protector, shielding him from the worst of it. One friend shared that she was incredibly protective of Harry, sometimes to her own detriment, always ensuring he felt supported, even as she herself was being pushed to the edge. Everything was beginning to take its toll. The relentless media scrutiny, the business setbacks, the distance from family, and the weight of Harry's ongoing trauma all bore down on Meghan. For years, she had been the steady rock, the unwavering support system. But cracks were starting to show. By late 2024, those who spoke to her privately noticed a shift. She was exhausted, emotionally drained, struggling under the immense burden of it all. One source described her as feeling completely drained, like she has nothing left to give, unless something changes. The question was, what could possibly change? Meghan had hoped that stepping back from royalty and finally telling their side of the story would bring them peace, or at least some relief. But the scrutiny and relentless judgment followed them across the ocean. If anything, it seemed to intensify. Detractors became louder, and their once loyal supporters grew quieter. Over time, the weight of it all began pressing down on her in ways she hadn't fully realized until one pivotal moment. According to insiders, the turning point came during an intimate conversation, possibly with a close friend or advisor, where she finally let her guard down. At first, Meghan was composed as she recounted the ordeals of the past few years, the loneliness she had endured behind palace walls, the helplessness of watching Harry struggle with the pain of his fractured family, and the sting of betrayal from people they once trusted. But as she spoke, her carefully maintained strength began to falter. She described Harry, so courageous, so determined, yet weighed down by grief and anger that refused to fade. How many nights had she held him after he woke from nightmares of paparazzi chases or bitter fights replaying in his head? How many times had she buried her own pain just to lift him up? The realization crashed over her. She had been hurting deeply for a long time. As this truth settled, Meghan's composed exterior finally cracked. Tears she had held back for years began to spill, and for the first time she struggled to put into words the depth of what she felt. Those present were stunned. Meghan, always measured and careful with her words, could barely articulate the storm inside her. In that moment, she reportedly broke down completely, her voice raw as she uttered something no one expected to hear. "I can't stand him." The room went silent. The weight of those words hung in the air. Did she mean Harry? The very man she had fought so fiercely to protect? The man who had turned his back on everything he knew for her? But as she caught her breath and continued, the real meaning emerged. It wasn't resentment toward her husband. It was anguish. "I can't stand him being in this much pain anymore," she finally said through her sobs. And with that, the truth she had been holding in finally came to light. Prince Harry, the brave prince, the man who had sacrificed his title, his home, and his family's approval for love, was suffering. Deeply. And it was breaking Meghan's heart to watch. She couldn't bear to see the man she loved reduced to a shadow of himself, crushed under the weight of unrelenting conflict and scrutiny. Those 4 words, "I can't stand him," encapsulated everything. Not frustration with Harry, but devastation over what this battle had done to him. This was Meghan's breaking point. Not a grand public spectacle, not a carefully crafted media moment, just raw, unfiltered emotion behind closed doors. And with it, an unspoken truth about Prince Harry slipped through the cracks of her usual composure. The world had painted him as either a villain or a victim, but in reality, he was just a wounded soul. A husband trying to keep his family safe while carrying years of unresolved trauma. And Meghan, after so long of being his unwavering source of strength, finally admitted to herself just how much it was costing her. This moment didn't play out in front of cameras, nor was it captured in a headline-grabbing interview. It was a private reckoning that later surfaced in whispers. But the impact was undeniable. Meghan's quiet breakdown signaled a shift, not just in their marriage, but in their entire approach to life. In the months that followed, subtle changes became apparent. Fewer public appearances, a retreat from high-profile projects, a renewed focus on personal healing rather than external battles. Her emotional confession wasn't about a marriage in trouble. It was about a love so deep that watching her partner suffer had become unbearable. While the world continued to dissect the drama of their royal exit, behind closed doors was a marriage tested by extraordinary pressures. It raised a question far more complex than any tabloid headline. Can true love survive when protecting the person you love means watching them endure unimaginable pain?